Curiosity. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the International Space Station Harmony, watching the sleek crystalline ship of the Lyrians dock with an almost ethereal grace. After decades of searching the cosmos for intelligent life, humanity's first contact had come not with conquest or conflict, but with curiosity. The Lyrians were a species of empaths, their translucent bodies pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that reflected their emotional states. They had arrived 6 months ago, establishing diplomatic relations with a refreshing directness that made most human politicians uncomfortable. Their quest: to understand humanity in all its complex glory. Sarah had adjusted her uniform and checked her translator pad one final time. As the station's xenological relations officer, she had been chosen to host the newest delegation of Lyrian scholars. Their previous cultural exchange sessions had focused on art, music, and literature. Today's topic, however, made her cheeks flush slightly: human romance. The airlock cycled, releasing a soft hiss as the inner doors slid open. 3 Lyrians glided through, their crystalline forms catching the station's lights and creating dancing rainbow patterns on the walls. The leader, distinguished by more complex geometric patterns flowing across their surface, approached Sarah. "Greetings, Commander Chen." The translator rendered their light patterns into words. "I am Scholar Zyrix. We are most grateful for this opportunity to learn about human pair bonding rituals." Sarah smiled, professional mask firmly in place. "Welcome aboard Harmony, Scholar Zyrix. Please follow me to the Cultural Exchange Chamber." As they walked through the station's corridors, Sarah couldn't help but notice how the junior Lyrian scholars' patterns flickered with barely contained excitement. Their species communicated emotions directly through their bioluminescence. Lying was literally impossible for them. It made diplomatic relations refreshingly straightforward, if sometimes uncomfortably honest. The Cultural Exchange Chamber was designed for comfort by both species standards: human chairs alongside Lyrian crystalline resting platforms, temperature and lighting adjusted to accommodate both physiologies. As they settled in, Zyrix's patterns shifted to what Sarah had learned to recognize as their equivalent of clearing their throat. "Commander Chen, our preliminary studies of human literature and entertainment media have left us confused." Zyrix's patterns rippled with genuine puzzlement. "Your species places extraordinary emphasis on the pressing together of facial muscles and the exchange of biological fluids. We seek to understand, how does it feel to kiss?" Sarah nearly choked on her coffee. She had expected questions about human romance, but their directness still caught her off guard. "Well," she began, setting down her cup, "kissing is more than just a physical action. It's an expression of emotional connection, affection, and attraction." The junior scholar's patterns swirled with intense interest, recording every word. Zyrix leaned forward slightly, their crystalline form refracting light in complex patterns. "But why the mouth? Your species has many nerve endings throughout your body. Why choose such a vulnerable location for expressing affection?" Sarah found herself warming to the topic, their genuine curiosity breaking through her initial embarrassment. "The lips are particularly sensitive, yes, but it's also about trust. Allowing someone that close, sharing something so intimate, it's a way of showing complete faith in another person." "Fascinating." Zyrix's whole form lit up with excitement. "Could you demonstrate?" Sarah blinked. "I'm sorry." "A physical demonstration. We understand humans often learn through observation and mimicry. Perhaps if we could observe the ritual directly." "I don't think that would be appropriate," Sarah said carefully, fighting back a laugh. "Kissing is typically private, shared between people who have developed romantic feelings for each other." The Lyrian's patterns shifted in what Sarah had learned to recognize as disappointment. "We apologize if we have caused offense. Our species shares emotions directly through light patterns. The concept of physical touch as emotional expression is novel." Sarah leaned forward, sensing an opportunity for deeper understanding. "How do Lyrians express romantic attraction?" Zyrix's patterns shifted to a soft, pulsing glow. We synchronize our emotional patterns, creating harmonies of light and feeling. When two Lyrians are compatible, their patterns naturally align, creating new and beautiful combinations. That sounds beautiful, Sarah said sincerely. Perhaps we're not so different after all. Humans also seek harmony with their partners, we just express it differently. The junior scholars were practically vibrating with excitement, their patterns creating a dazzling light show. Xerx's form settled into what Sarah recognized as their contemplative configuration. Commander Chen, Xerx said carefully, would you be willing to teach us more about human romance? Not just the physical aspects, but the emotional journey. We find ourselves deeply intrigued by how your species bridges the gap between individual consciousness. Sarah smiled, realizing that this cultural exchange was about to become far more interesting than she'd anticipated. I would be honored, Scholar Xerx. Though I should warn you, human romance is rarely simple or straightforward. Complexity does not deter us, Commander. In fact, Xerx's patterns shifted to something Sarah had never seen before. It rather excites us. As the session continued, Sarah found herself explaining concepts like butterflies in the stomach, weak knees, and racing hearts to an increasingly fascinated alien audience. The Lyrians' literal interpretation of these metaphors led to several amusing misunderstandings, but their genuine desire to understand human emotion was touching. Little did Sarah know that this session would mark the beginning of a revolutionary change in human-Lyrian relations, one that would challenge both species' understanding of love, connection, and the universal language of romance. Cultural exchange gone wild. The news spread through Harmony Station faster than a hull breach alert. The Lyrians had become obsessed with human romance. In the week following their initial cultural exchange session, Commander Sarah Chen found herself dealing with increasingly bizarre situations as the alien scholars attempted to understand human courtship rituals. Commander Chen, Xerx's familiar voice pattern echoed through the station's hydroponics garden. We require urgent clarification. Sarah looked up from her tablet to find all three Lyrian scholars hovering near the tomato plants, their crystalline forms pulsing with what she now recognized as academic distress. The junior scholars, Vex and Lumi, were projecting recordings of what appeared to be human romantic comedies onto their surfaces. We have been studying your entertainment archives, Xerx explained, patterns shifting rapidly. But we are experiencing significant confusion regarding the concept of playing hard to get. Humans deliberately pretend disinterest in potential mates while secretly desiring them. Is this not inefficient? Sarah suppressed a smile. Human courtship is complicated. Sometimes people fear rejection, so they protect themselves by hiding their true feelings. But why not simply display your emotional patterns clearly as we do? Vex's forms sparkled with genuine confusion. Your species values honesty, yet in matters of the heart, you often deceive. It's not exactly deception, Sarah began, then paused, considering. Well, okay, maybe it is, but it's more about the journey than the destination. The uncertainty, the anticipation, it can make the eventual connection more meaningful. Lumi, the youngest scholar, suddenly lit up with what Sarah had learned to interpret as triumph. Like your human chocolate, the delayed gratification enhances the eventual pleasure of consumption. That's actually not a bad analogy, Sarah admitted, trying not to laugh at the idea of comparing human romance to candy. We have another query, Xerx continued, their patterns shifting to a more formal configuration. We have observed that humans often engage in competitive behaviors to attract mates. Yesterday, we witnessed Lieutenant Rodriguez attempting to lift excessive weights in the exercise facility while Officer Chang was present. Was this a courtship display? Sarah nearly choked. You've been watching the crew's exercise sessions. We are scholars, Xerx replied, patterns radiating innocent curiosity. All human behavior is worthy of study. Right, Sarah sighed. Well, yes. Sometimes humans try to impress potential partners by displaying physical capabilities or other attractive qualities. This led to an hour-long discussion about the difference between healthy attraction and showing off, during which Sarah had to explain why the Lyrians couldn't simply announce ship-wide assessments of crew members' reproductive fitness. The situation reached new levels of complexity when the Lyrians decided to conduct practical research. Sarah arrived at the station's common area the next morning to find it transformed into what appeared to be a terrestrial dating venue, complete with dim lights and synthesized mood music. "Scholar Zurich," Sarah called out, pinching the bridge of her nose. "Why is there a recreation of a Paris cafe in our common area?" Zurich emerged from behind a holographic street lamp, their patterns showing what Sarah had come to recognize as academic enthusiasm. "We are creating controlled environments for observing human courtship behaviors. We have also programmed simulations of a beach at sunset, a mountain cabin, and something called a drive-in movie theater, though we are unclear on why humans find watching entertainment in primitive transport vehicles romantic." "You can't just experiment on the crew's love lives," Sarah protested. "But we have received 17 volunteer applications." Louis chimed in, projecting a list of crew names that made Sarah's eyes widen. "Humans appear very interested in participating in our research." "Of course they are," Sarah muttered. The station's crew had been in space for months. Any novelty was welcome, especially if it involved potential romance. Commander Chen, Zurich's patterns shifted to something more serious. "We have been studying human physiological responses to romantic stimuli. Your heart rate increases when we discuss these matters. Your skin temperature elevates. Are you experiencing romantic attraction to our research?" Sarah felt her face flush. "That's not. It's just embarrassment. Humans sometimes get flustered when discussing personal matters." "Fascinating." All three Lyrians began pulsing with excited patterns. "This embarrassment, it shares physiological markers with attraction. Is this why humans engage in the behavior known as blushing? A display of vulnerability to potential mates?" Before Sarah could formulate a response, the station's communication system crackled to life. "Commander Chen to the diplomatic suite. The Lyrian High Council is requesting an update on the cultural exchange progress." Sarah had never been so grateful for an interruption. "We'll continue this discussion later," she told the scholars, trying to ignore how Zurich's patterns had shifted to something that looked suspiciously like knowing amusement. As she headed to the diplomatic suite, Sarah couldn't help but smile. The Lyrians' literal interpretation of human romance was leading to chaos, yes, but it was also forcing her to examine her own species' customs with fresh eyes. Why did humans make courtship so complicated? Why wrap something as fundamental as attraction in layers of social ritual and unspoken rules? And why, she wondered, did she find herself increasingly fascinated by the way Zurich's patterns shifted to warmer hues whenever they spoke about matters of the heart? The diplomatic suite's door slid open, revealing the holographic presence of the Lyrian High Council. Their massive crystalline forms filled the room with rainbow refractions, and Sarah straightened her uniform, preparing to explain why half her crew had volunteered to participate in alien dating experiments. As she began her report, she couldn't help but think that perhaps the Lyrians weren't the only ones learning new things about love and connection. Sometimes it took an outside perspective to make you question everything you thought you knew about matters of the heart. The language of love. Commander Sarah Chen was beginning to understand why first contact specialists went grey early. 2 weeks into the Lyrians' research into human romance, Harmony Station had transformed into what her chief of security dubbed an interstellar dating laboratory. The latest incident involved finding Vex and Lumi attempting to recreate famous scenes from human romance movies in the zero-gravity chamber. Their crystalline forms sparkled as they tried to understand why floating in space together might be considered romantic. "But Commander," Lumi protested, their patterns showing genuine confusion. "In the human film Gravity, the characters formed a deep emotional bond while spacewalking. We are simply attempting to reproduce the conditions." "That wasn't exactly a romance movie," Sarah explained, trying to keep her voice steady. and they were mostly trying not to die. Ah, Vex's patterns brightened. Shared survival experiences as a catalyst for romantic attraction. This explains many of your entertainment narratives. Before Sarah could correct this new misunderstanding, the communicator chimed. Commander Chen, Xerx's familiar voice pattern emerged. Could you join me in the botanical laboratory? I have made an intriguing discovery regarding human courtship customs. Sarah found Xerx amid a forest of floating roses, their crystalline form refracting rainbow patterns through the petals. The sight was breathtaking, and for a moment she forgot her professional demeanor. These specimens, Xerx began, their patterns shifting to scholarly excitement. Humans exchange them as symbols of romantic intent. But why choose reproductive organs of plants? Why not entire plants? Is there symbolic meaning in presenting only the reproductive structures? Sarah felt her face warm. It's more about their beauty and scent than their biological function, she explained. Though when you put it that way, it does sound a bit odd. Humans often say love blooms, Xerx continued, their patterns shifting to something softer. Perhaps there is an unconscious connection to plant life cycles in your romantic metaphors. Sarah found herself moving closer, drawn by the way Xerx's light patterns danced through the floating flowers. Maybe we're drawn to things that grow and change, like relationships do. Growing and changing, Xerx mused, their patterns rippling thoughtfully. Like how my understanding of human emotion grows with each of our conversations. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Was Xerx flirting? Could Lyrians even flirt? She was saved from pursuing that dangerous line of thought by an urgent message from the station's A. Commander Chen, there appears to be a situation in the recreation deck. Multiple crew members are attempting to teach the junior scholars about spin the bottle. Oh no, Sarah muttered. Xerx, I'm sorry, I need tow. I will accompany you, Xerx said, their patterns showing what Sarah now recognized as concern mixed with amusement. After all, this is valuable research data. They arrived to find Vex and Lumi hovering excitedly over a group of off-duty crew members, their surfaces projecting rapid-fire questions about the statistical probability of bottle rotation affecting genuine romantic connections. It's just a game, Lieutenant Rodriguez was explaining, his face flushed. It's not meant to be scientific. But you use it to facilitate kissing between potential mates. Lumi's patterns swirled with academic intensity. Surely there must be some evolutionary advantage to random mate selection. That's enough research for today, Sarah announced firmly. The crew scattered, looking equal parts embarrassed and disappointed. Commander, Xerx said later, as they walked through the station's quieter corridors, we have been studying human romance for weeks now, yet I feel we've barely scratched the surface. Your species has created such elaborate rituals around pair bonding. Sometimes I think we make it more complicated than it needs to be, Sarah admitted. Perhaps Xerx's patterns shifted to something she'd never seen before, a soft, pulsing glow that seemed to reach out toward her. Or perhaps the complexity is part of its beauty, like how humans can communicate so much without words, a glance, a smile, a touch. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. There was something different in Xerx's tone, in the way their patterns seemed to dance just for her. Xerx, are you studying me right now? Always, they admitted, their patterns showing complete honesty. But not just for research. I find myself fascinated by your individual expressions of emotion, the way your voice changes when you're trying not to laugh, how your eyes reflect the stars when you look out the observation window, the subtle changes in your body temperature when we discuss certain topics. Sarah swallowed hard. That's very detailed observation. Is it making you uncomfortable? Your heart rate has increased again. No, Sarah said softly. Not uncomfortable, just aware. Their conversation was interrupted by the station's evening shift change announcement, but something had shifted between them. As they parted ways, Sarah couldn't help but notice how Xerx's patterns lingered in a goodbye that seemed reluctant. Back in her quarters, Sarah stared at her reflection in the mirror. Was she actually developing feelings for a crystalline alien scientist? What would that even mean? The Lyrians experienced emotions so differently, communicated so differently, and yet, her communicator chimed with a message from Xerix. Humans often say that love transcends boundaries. Perhaps it can transcend species as well. This is not a research question. Sarah smiled, her heart racing. Maybe the Lyrians weren't the only ones learning new ways to express emotion. Maybe some things really were universal. In the quiet of space, surrounded by the soft hum of the station's systems, Commander Sarah Chen began composing a reply that would change the course of human-Lyrian relations forever. Heart meets mind. Commander Sarah Chen sat in her quarters, staring at the message she'd composed for Xerix. Her finger hovered over the send button as doubt crept in. How exactly does one respond to an alien's subtle declaration of interest? The diplomatic training manuals definitely hadn't covered this. Message held for 30 minutes, the station's AI announced helpfully. Would you like to review again? Sarah groaned. Delete draft. Commander Chen, the AI continued, Scholar Xerix is requesting access to your quarters. They appear to be glowing more intensely than usual. Before Sarah could respond, her door chimed. Taking a deep breath, she straightened her uniform. Enter. Xerix glided in, the crystalline form pulsing with colors Sarah had never seen before, deep purples and blues that seemed to swirl and dance. The sight was mesmerizing. You didn't respond to my message, Xerix said directly, their patterns showing a mix of concern and something else. Hope. I've drafted 12 responses, Sarah admitted with a nervous laugh. None of them seemed right. Humans often complicate simple matters, Xerix observed, moving closer. My message was a question. It requires only a yes or no. Sarah stood, her heart racing. It's not that simple, Xerix. There are protocols, regulations about fraternization with alien species. Not to mention the practical considerations. We're literally made of different matter. Xerix's patterns shifted to what Sarah recognized as their analytical mode. You are concerned about physical compatibility. Yet our research shows that human romance encompasses far more than physical interaction. You yourself explained that emotional connection is the foundation. Yes, but... And we Lyrians are empaths, Xerix continued, their form beginning to glow with increasing intensity. We experience emotions more directly than humans. When I am near you, my patterns shift automatically. I cannot control it. Would you like to see? Before Sarah could respond, Xerix's entire form began to pulse with a rhythmic light that seemed to match her heartbeat. The sight took her breath away. This is how I see you, Xerix explained softly. Each emotion, each subtle shift in your biochemistry, creates patterns I can read and respond to. When you're happy, I glow brighter. When you're sad, my patterns dim. When you're near... The light show intensified, creating a dazzling display that filled her quarters with dancing rainbows. It was beautiful, intimate, and utterly alien. That's how you feel about me, Sarah whispered. It is a pale reflection, Xerix admitted. Human language lacks the vocabulary to express a full spectrum of Lyrian emotional resonance. Just as our bodies lack the ability to kiss in your way. But perhaps... They moved closer, their crystalline form humming with energy. Perhaps we could find our own way to share affection, a bridge between our species' methods of expressing emotion. Sarah felt drawn toward the light, her hand reaching out almost involuntarily. As her fingers neared Xerix's surface, she felt a warm, tingling sensation, like static electricity but gentler, more controlled. Is this safe? She asked, though she didn't pull away. We have been studying human biology extensively, Xerix assured her, their patterns showing complete honesty. This form of energy transfer is harmless. It is how we share emotions among our own kind, adapted to be compatible with human neurology. When Sarah's hand finally made contact with Xerix's surface, the sensation was unlike anything she'd ever experienced. It was as if she could feel their emotions directly: wonder, curiosity, affection, and something deeper, something that made her own heart race. "Oh," she breathed. Indeed, Xerx's patterns swirled with joy. "This is how we kiss, Sarah Chen." The moment was interrupted by an urgent knock at her door. "Commander." Vex's voice pattern came through clearly. "We require clarification. The crew is engaging in something called karaoke and claiming it is a crucial part of human courtship rituals." Sarah couldn't help but laugh, even as she reluctantly pulled her hand away from Xerx. "Duty calls." "Always," Xerx agreed, their patterns showing amusement. "Though perhaps we could continue this cultural exchange later." "I'd like that," Sarah said softly. "But first we should probably stop your junior scholars from turning the station into an interstellar dating experiment." As they headed toward what would undoubtedly be another amusing crisis, Sarah realized something had fundamentally shifted. The barrier between human and Lyrian wasn't just being bridged, it was being transformed into something entirely new. The station's gossip mill would explode when news got out about her and Xerx. The diplomatic course would have a field day. But watching Xerx's patterns shift and dance in response to her presence, Sarah found she didn't care. Some things really did transcend species, politics, and even the vast distances between stars. Though she did make a mental note to explain to the junior scholars that not every human social activity was actually a courtship ritual. The karaoke situation would definitely need addressing before someone proposed marriage over a badly sung Earth classic. Breaking barriers. News of the relationship between Commander Sarah Chen and Scholar Xerx spread through Harmony Station like a quantum entanglement event, instantly and in all directions at once. The human crew tried to pretend they weren't staring when the pair walked through corridors together, Sarah's hand occasionally passing through Xerx's luminescent form in their unique version of holding hands. The junior Lyrian scholars were less subtle, openly recording every interaction for their unprecedented research opportunity. "Your epidermis releases increased levels of oxytocin when Scholar Xerx is present," Looney announced one morning in the mess hall, causing Sarah to choke on her coffee. "This is consistent with human pair bonding biochemistry." "Thank you, Lumi," Sarah managed, wiping coffee from her uniform. "Perhaps we could be a little less clinical about personal matters." "But Commander," Vex chimed in, their patterns showing genuine confusion, "your relationship is revolutionizing our understanding of interspecies emotional dynamics. The Lyrian Science Academy has requested daily updates." Sarah looked helplessly at Xerx, who was pulsing with what she now recognized as barely contained amusement. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" "Your embarrassment patterns are quite endearing," Xerx admitted, their forms shimming with affectionate light. Their moment was interrupted by Sarah's communicator. "Commander Chen, priority message from Earth. The Interspecies Relations Committee requests an immediate conference." Sarah sighed. She'd been expecting this. Well, time to face the music. "Another human idiom?" Xerx asked, their patterns shifting to concern. "Should I accompany you?" "Please," Sarah said softly. "We're in this together, right?" The conference room's holoscreen flickered to life, revealing a panel of stern-faced officials from Earth. Sarah stood straight, Xerx's reassuring glow at her side. "Commander Chen," Admiral Harrison began, his voice carefully neutral. "We've received interesting reports from Harmony Station. Would you care to explain why your cultural exchange program has evolved into what some are calling an interstellar dating service?" "Sir," Sarah began, but was interrupted by Dr. Zhang, the xenobiologist. "The implications are fascinating." Zhang leaned forward, eyes bright. "Commander, our sensors show unique energy patterns during your interactions with Scholar Xerx. Are you actually achieving some form of empathic connection?" "It's more like..." Sarah paused, searching for words. "It's like learning a new language. One based on energy and emotion rather than words." Precisely, Xerx's patterns shifted to their formal academic configuration. Humans experience emotions as internal states with external expressions. We Lyrians experience them as energy patterns we can share directly. Commander Chen has helped us discover that these methods are not mutually exclusive. The panel erupted in excited scientific discussion, with occasional concerned murmurs from the diplomatic corps representatives. Sarah felt Zurich's energy field brush against her hand, sending warmth and reassurance through their connection. While the scientific implications are fascinating, Admiral Harrison cut in. There are serious diplomatic considerations. Commander Chen, you're setting a precedent here. Other species might. Might what, sir? Sarah asked quietly. Discover that humans are capable of forming meaningful connections across any barrier. That love isn't limited by biology or physics. The Admiral blinked, clearly unprepared for such a direct response. Dr. Zhang was practically bouncing in her seat with excitement. If I may, Zurich's interjected, their patterns displaying calm authority. The Lyrian High Council views this development as highly positive. Our species has always valued emotional honesty above all else. In Commander Chen, we have found that humans share this capacity for genuine connection, merely expressed differently. The meeting continued for hours, cycling through scientific inquiry, diplomatic concerns, and philosophical debates about the nature of love itself. Through it all, Sarah felt Zurich's presence beside her, their patterns adapting to support her whenever her energy flagged. Later, in the quiet of the observation deck, Sarah and Zurich watched Earth rotate slowly below them. They're going to study us, Sarah said softly. We'll be the test case for human-Lyrian relationships. Does this concern you? Zurich's patterns shifted to show gentle inquiry. No, Sarah realized, surprising herself. Let them study. Maybe they'll learn what we already know. That connection isn't about physical forms or cultural barriers. It's about finding someone who makes your world brighter just by being in it. Zurich's form began to pulse with that special pattern that was just for her, the one that matched her heartbeat. Speaking of brightness, they said, their tone playful, would you like to see something new? Their form began to shift, creating complex patterns Sarah had never seen before. The lights danced and swirled, and suddenly she felt a wave of pure emotion wash over her. Joy, affection, desire, and something deeper, something that humans called. Oh, Sarah breathed, recognizing the feeling. Is that? The closest translation in your language would be love, Zurich confirmed, though it fails to capture the full spectrum of the emotion. Sarah reached out, letting her hand pass through Zurich's luminescent form, feeling the energy patterns sync with her own nervous system. She didn't need words to respond. Her racing heart and flooding emotions spoke directly to Zurich's empathic senses. Above them, the stars wheeled slowly in their cosmic dance, witnesses to a love story that defied physics, biology, and the very notion of what was possible. On Harmony Station, harmony itself was being redefined, one shared emotion at a time. Though they still have to deal with Vex and Looney's latest research project, apparently they discovered human romance novels and were now organizing a station-wide book club to analyze human mating literature. Some cultural barriers, it seemed, would take a bit longer to bridge. Universal romance. 6 months after what the crew now called the Great Romance Experiment, Harmony Station had become the unofficial capital of human-Lyrian relations. The original cultural exchange program had evolved into something far more significant, a testing ground for what was possible when two species decided to bridge the gap between their hearts. Sarah stood in her dress uniform, trying not to fidget as she watched the latest Lyrian ship dock. This wasn't just any diplomatic visit, it was the Lyrian High Council themselves, coming to witness what their scientists had dubbed the love phenomenon. Your anxiety patterns are creating beautiful ripples, Zurich observed, their form shifting to match her nervous energy. Though perhaps you might prefer to feel calmer. Sarah smiled as Zurich's soothing energy patterns washed over her. After months of practice, they had perfected the art of emotional synchronization. What would I do without you? experience emotions in a tragically non-luminescent manner, Xerix teased, their patterns dancing with affection. The docking bay doors opened to reveal the High Council members, their massive crystalline forms filling the space with prismatic light. Behind them came a group of humans, the Interspecies Relations Committee, finally making their first in-person visit to assess the situation. Distinguished guests, Sarah began the formal greeting, but was interrupted by Lumi practically bouncing into the docking bay. Esteemed council members, the young scholars' patterns blaze with excitement. You must review our latest findings. Humans have 76 different categories of romantic relationships depicted in their entertainment media alone. We've created a comprehensive classification system. Lumi, Vex chided, their patterns showing embarrassment. The proper protocols. But the High Council members were already showing patterns of intense interest, their massive forms bending down to examine Lumi's data projections. The Human Committee members watched in fascination as streams of light and data flowed between the Lyrians. Remarkable, Admiral Harrison murmured. Dr. Chen, your reports didn't do justice to the reality of Lyrian communication. That's rather the point, sir, Sarah said. Some things have to be experienced to be understood. The formal inspection turned into something more like a cultural festival. The station's crew had prepared demonstrations of various human customs, while the Lyrian scholars shared their own traditions. In the recreation deck, now permanently modified to accommodate both species' social needs, humans and Lyrians mingled freely. Watch this, Sarah heard Lieutenant Rodriguez say to a fascinated group of Lyrian visitors. He was teaching them earth dance steps, their crystalline forms attempting to mimic the rhythm of salsa music. The resulting light show was spectacular, if not quite what the original choreographers had in mind. In the botanical lab, now home to both earth flowers and Lyrian crystal gardens, Dr. Zhang was deep in discussion with the Lyrian scientists about the biochemistry of emotion. The energy patterns you generate, she was saying, they're not just light, they're carrying actual emotional information, the implications for human psychology. But the real surprise came during the High Council's formal address to the station. We came expecting to evaluate an unprecedented diplomatic situation, the council leader's patterns announced. Instead, we have found something far more valuable, proof that love, in all its forms, truly is universal. The leader's form shifted, creating a display that filled the entire chamber. Behold the pattern bond between Commander Chen and Scholar Xerix. Sarah felt Xerix's energy field pulse with surprise as their combined emotional patterns were projected for all to see. It was intensely private, like having your heartbeat broadcast to an audience, but also strangely beautiful. The swirling colors and rhythms of their connection danced through the air, human biochemistry and Lyrian energy intertwined in ways that should have been impossible. This is not just a relationship, the leader continued. It is proof that consciousness, emotion, and love transcend the boundaries we believed were fixed by biology and physics. Where there is understanding, there are no true barriers. Sarah felt Xerix's energy wrap around her like an embrace. Around them, other humans and Lyrians were watching in wonder as their own smaller connections became visible. Friendships, professional bonds, and even a few other budding romances glowing in the shared space. Commander Chen, Admiral Harrison said later, during the celebration that followed, I owe you an apology. We were so concerned about protocols and precedents that we almost missed something revolutionary. Love usually is revolutionary, sir, Sarah replied, watching Vex and Lumi attempt to teach a group of engineers the Lyrian equivalent of a waltz. The resulting chaos of light and laughter filled the room. Your rhythm is improving, Xerix noted, their patterns swirling playfully as they joined her, though your energy still spikes unpredictably when you're amused. You love my unpredictable energy spikes, Sarah teased. Indeed, Xerix agreed, their form shifting to that special pattern that was just for her. Though I still don't understand why humans insist on pressing their food intake organs together to show affection. Sarah laughed, letting her hand pass through Zirich's luminescent form in their own version of a kiss. Some mysteries of human romance may remain eternal. Perhaps not. Zirich's patterns showed scholarly interest. Lumi's latest research project. No more research. Sarah groaned, but she was smiling. Can't we just enjoy being in love without documenting every aspect of it? But think of the data. Zirich's protested in perfect imitation of their junior scholars, earning another laugh from Sarah. Above them, the stars continued their eternal dance, witnesses to a love story that had rewritten the rules of what was possible. On Harmony Station, humans and Lyrians had discovered that the language of love needed no translation. It only needed hearts, minds, and spirits willing to reach across the void to find each other. Though Sarah did make a mental note to warn Earth's diplomatic course about Lumi's planned presentation on the statistical analysis of human romance narratives. A cross-species perspective. Some cultural exchanges, she'd learned, were better left to develop naturally. After all, love, like light, found its own way to shine.